Traversal is Death Stranding's main focus and also its most intriguing aspect. There's a lot of thought put into it, and you'll be spending some time thinking about the best way to go about your deliveries. This is more so true for the earlier hours of the game because there you are really lacking in tools and options to traverse. While walking, you keep your balance with the shoulder buttons. Keeping your balance isn't hard, like not at all. I fell over 7 times in my 30-hour playthrough, but it's still engaging enough to be semi-fun and a much needed mechanic in this sort of game. You run faster while being unbraced, so that's what I was doing for most of my playthrough. The terrain is actual terrain in this game, and there are plenty of animations to back that, so it's pretty hard to fall over when you pay attention, but the risk being there still makes traversal feel engaging, and being able to min-max and optimize your traversal is really fun. One of my favorite moments in the game was when I was making my way up this mountain. It was a pretty gruesome climb. Eventually I reached the summit and started booking it down the mountain. I'll never forget how big of a smile I had on my face. The context is what makes it so special. Death Stranding is probably the only game that could make me feel the way I did in the way it did. And that is only possible by the complexity of the traversal system. When it rains, dirt becomes muddy and it's easier to slip on. If there are a lot of little rocks, Sam will stumble easier as opposed to on flat ground where he is really stable. The higher you tower luggage on your back, the more you will sway around. When you make a sharp turn, you'll have to shift your weight in the other direction to keep balance, and when you run down a mountain, you go faster. It's a bunch of little things that stacked on top of each other make for an interesting package. You start off with just a backpack and some cargo, but you become a more effective deliverer both as a player and in the tools at your disposal. The latter is by far the more important of the two. Because the skill ceiling and skill floor are both low, new gear will be the biggest difference maker. The exoskeleton is the first of many upgrades you'll get throughout the game, and felt so good to unlock because you spent some hours just using your legs, and that's where it's just getting started. The missions you get are all really story and context driven. You'll be delivering crucial medicine to a dying patient or pizzas to a hungry guy. I never really thought about the deliveries in the context of the story, but purely gameplay related. I pretty much just did them to do them. Completing a delivery is nice, but there really could have been a lot more going on here. Part of this is due to the rewards. You are rewarded for your efforts in a few ways: likes, blueprints, and Chiron network. Likes are dependent on how well you do in your deliveries. Nice to have, but nothing crazy to really motivate you. Blueprints. Easily the best unlock, but it could also just be a weapon. The new weapon will probably just be a stronger version of your old one, but the old one already did what it was supposed to do. The literal first weapon you get can already one-shot all the guards, so pretty much all the guns you get after that are BT killers and quickly become dispensable after you've gotten better versions of them. The combat in this game is what you expect. It's just something to get through, not something that's that fun to engage with. It's nice to be able to dispose of BTs, but only because they are in my way. Looting the enemy camps felt like wastes of time. If not necessary, why bother? And if necessary, get through it as quickly as possible. Still, there are a lot of good blueprints. PCCs are definitely a highlight, and your buildings maybe helping other porters out is definitely a nice boost of incentive to go out and build. So likes are nice to receive, but the upgrades that they provide aren't that impactful. Getting stars for different facilities is nice, but they didn't have any impactful gameplay changes. Every resource is so abundant that it will be a rarity if your facility actually runs out of something. I saw myself doing less and less of the optional content as I was going through the game. I think in that aspect I fell in the normal end of the bell curve. As the story develops and builds, it also builds up the tension and urgency you feel to progress. So when I entered Act 3, story stuff was pretty much all I did. That's just something built into sandbox open worlds with a story. Death Stranding, like many others, actually has a nice solution to this. After you finish the game, actually finish it I mean, you get sent back in time to the moment after you've saved the world, where you can go back and finish everything up without the FOMO of the main story breathing down your neck. So I actually did. And what I thought would be tens of extra hours ended up being short of 2. This session is what made me realize I was done with the game. I was wondering what would happen if I got a distribution center to 5 stars, so I did. What was the reward?
Oh, before I forget.
A star on my leg. After some reflection, I went on to my final delivery. It wouldn't be too bad, like a 3-minute ride. I ended up driving into a BT area in a really narrow pathway. I spent the next several minutes trying to get out of there with a depleted BB and eventually finish the delivery. I say it again, it is important that you don't expect to get something from doing stuff. The delivery should be the reward. Thing is, I don't know if that makes for good game design. You'll find a few cargoes on your way to places, but that is literally the only interactable in the whole game. I am actually surprised that a game this big with this much detail has so little points of interest. I found a single hot tub. Delivering the lost cargo is fine, and there you do know what you'll get out of it because most of the time you'll get what the cargo's name implies. But a lot of them were just such a ways out of my way to go deliver them that I didn't even bother. Playing something or doing anything for that matter, you need to be motivated to do it. In Breath of the Wild, you don't just do the shrines for the shrines, you also do them because there are rewards for completing them. Death Stranding could have done a better job of making it more enticing to actually do stuff because the occasional reward and guaranteed dialogue aren't a good enough combo. That's why I enjoy the story missions the most, because I knew I was doing something of actual value. If other deliveries were roughly in the direction I was headed, I'd do them, but if they deviate too much, I'd avoid them. And that brings up a curious case too. Progressing in Death Stranding means becoming more effective, and a lot of the time that means interacting with the game less. Things that might have been big obstacles are barely noticeable now. Unlocking the bike feels really good because you knew how it was to walk, but is it now just bike stranding or zipline stranding? If completing deliveries is your sole purpose, maybe you'll like that. The game doesn't give you a lot of reasons to hop off your bike except for when you reach your destination, and that's pretty disappointing. Most of your deliveries will just be place this on your back and go. What I actually enjoyed were the ones where there were some conditions that needed to be met, like needing to hold on to one piece of cargo in your hand, or the cargo being vexed and needing to constantly spray it with repair spray, or carrying an explosive that will go off at the smallest bump. Okay, those last two are low-key tedious examples, but still, they serve for actually challenging deliveries, and them being optional and giving you neat extra rewards will be a perfect addition. It feels like they just scratched the surface with this stuff, and they could have taken this way further, like with the premium deliveries. Now the premium deliveries don't change a whole lot in the way you approach the mission, because they only change the stat requirements like damage percentage, time limit, and quantity. The cutscenes are long and plenty, but they never bothered me. The game still strikes a nice balance in exposition because most of the time you'll just be traveling alone with Sam, so it's nice for both him and you to get that extra bit of social interaction. Except for Amelie, all the characters are really likable and interesting, so seeing them engage with the antisocial, allergic for touch Sam is nice. After a while, if you are using the trike, the time spent in between cutscenes can start to become really short if you just do the story stuff. So to prevent that from happening, Kojima made the last fifth of the game take place on a giant snow mountain where you can hardly move. The combat shares a flaw with the traversal in that you don't actually need to interact with it a whole lot to be successful. I only saw myself needing to use stuff at my disposal when my stamina bar was running dry. And that is a pretty rare occurrence since there are plenty of spots to sleep with the online houses people have built. So you can take a bunch of equipment with you, but you'll probably need to look for a reason to really use them instead of being forced into a situation where you are rewarded for thinking ahead. Yeah, most places where you would think to use a ladder or rope could also be ascended or descended with your arms and legs, sparing you from the extra weight carrying those tools adds. In between deliveries, I was averaging around 5 minutes of menuing to deliver my packages and tidy up for the next delivery. And I was trying to be pretty quick about it too. Count that up over at least 70 deliveries, not counting the side stuff or the menuing you'll be doing while playing, and we are looking at 6 hours spent preparing to play the game. Wait. So 30 hours of playtime, minus 6 hours of menus, minus 7 hours of cutscenes. I don't know, you do the math. Menuing is something you can't really avoid with a game so focused on realistic inventorization. But it can get a bit much. Stocking up before every mission, recycling equipment if needed, all take some time that really adds up in the long run. It would have been nice if there were some quality of life changes regarding to some of the stuff that you'll constantly be doing, like loadout presets and shortcuts for optimizing equipment, dropping used stuff, and recycling used stuff are some of my ideas. Especially in combat, it's really immersion breaking to pause the game mid-engagement. But if I want to drop used equipment mid-battle and the alternative is dropping everything one by one, I'll definitely pick the more efficient option even if it means breaking my immersion. And that's a reoccurring theme in Death Stranding, trading efficiency for immersion. That's what the vehicles and zip lines really offer. How can you get immersed if you're flying over the map at crazy speeds, or bashing your bike into terrain hoping you'll get over something? And while you can consciously choose not to interact with these parts of the game, it'll make the game a miserable experience. Other than the terrain and the mules, there is one other form of opposition you'll be facing. The BTs. They are the only direct counter to vehicles and they are not fun to fight. You can only see them when you are pretty close by, which facilitates you to inch forward very slowly to the point where you can see them and blow them up. Rinse and repeat until you're out of the area. Unless you find one of these golden BTs which are invulnerable, with the only way to kill them being tediously sneaking up on them and hoping a prompt shows up that lets you get a one shot in. BTs are one of those mechanics that are intimidating at the start but quickly get annoying because there is a very specific way in which you need to deal with them, which is the opposite of the whole game's philosophy and clashing with the rest of the game.